I'm super excited. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to She. We are super excited to have another session. Today, I just want to remind you who she is and who our mission. So we are in a mission to help 1 million women create generational wealth through real estate. But not only that, we also are looking to foster personal, professional, and spiritual growth. So welcome to another session, and we want to hear what's she for you? What does that mean for you? So unmute yourself, tell us a little bit, turn on your cameras. We want to see you. Who's behind the computer?
Hey, Joy.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Vivian. Tell
Hey,
us
I
a
can
little
talk for what this means to me. For me, this means creating, I'm an immigrant, and for me, and I'm a military spouse. So it means creating generational wealth for my family, but also helping my parents, giving back to my parents. Yeah, just I'm in the process of transitioning out of being active duty military family to retired husband. So that comes with other exciting things. So yeah, that's part of what it means to me.
Awesome. We're super excited to have you. I'm also an immigrant, so super excited to have you. Anybody else? Because we have a packed session today, so we have time for one more person to share what does she mean to you. Joy, do you want to talk? You seem like you want to talk.
No, I just heard about she through Candace, and I am just actually getting into the real estate for the past couple of years after working in Vietnam for about 30 years, and so trying to develop being an entrepreneur and understanding the real estate aspects in the United States. So I heard about this support group, and I look forward to learning more and building my portfolio in real estate.
Yeah, ladies, connect with Joy. She's got a wonderful story helping out her Vietnamese country and raising capital for all different kinds of projects in her homeland. So she's a wonderful woman, and everyone should really reach out to her to get to know her better.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Candace. I know we have our speakers ready to go, and everybody is eager to listen to this conversation. So I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. And I am just delighted to have my own business attorneys locally here in the Detroit area that I work with and love. Laurianne and Lauren are attorneys at Rickard and Associates. It's a law firm here, like I said, in the St. Clair Shores, Grosse Pointe, Metro Detroit area in Michigan. And Laurianne started the firm about 25 years ago and has been a practicing her law for over 37 years, and Lauren has been practicing for over 10 years. Both Laurianne and Lauren are licensed here in the state of Michigan, and then Laurianne is also licensed in Florida. So both Lauren and Laurianne work at $1 billion entities, and before coming to Rickard and Associates, did all their corporate work as attorneys. Rickard and Associates specializes in business succession planning and estate planning, and we're thrilled to have you both here with us this evening.
Thanks so much, Candace. We appreciate being here with you guys. And what a great start to the evening. That's the best start to any speech I've given in 37 years, I'll have you know.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying our She community. We just love our ladies, and our prayer and hope for all of them is so that we can bring educational stuff to them every single session so that we can help build and network together.
Great.
So with that being said, I want to hop right in because I know we want to be conscientious of everybody's time. And one of the questions that we've talked about, the three of us, is why it's important for women to take responsibility for protecting their assets. So I'd love for you both to share with the group why women need to really put this on their list for 2024, getting this in order.
Well, that's a great question. I got to start off by just letting you know that any of the comments that Lauren and I make today are just educational. They're not legal advice. We are, as Candace mentioned, in Michigan. And so you may be in a different state. And so you want to make sure that you know what laws apply to you. But that's a great question. And something that's so important for women to pay attention to. I'll use myself as an example. I got married fairly young and had two young girls. My second daughter was born with a life-threatening illness. And all of a sudden, I found myself going through a divorce with those problems. And I hadn't done much planning at that young age for any of protecting my assets. And I went through a divorce. And really my pension at that point, my house, my IRAs, all of those things, you know, were pretty much decimated in that divorce, along with having a sick baby at the time. So I hadn't thought about things like a prenup, or, you know, protecting some of those other assets that I had built. And so that pretty much took me, you know, 10 or 15 years to recover from, and maybe even longer in some cases, because I had lost my house in the divorce and that kind of thing. So it just goes to show you that even if you're knowledgeable and planning, things can happen that you don't expect. And that's why you want to make sure that you're protecting your assets. And I'll let Lauren.
Sure. So I would echo everything Laurianne said. And I would just say, I mean, I know there's a lot of business owners in this group as well. And when you want to look at protecting your assets, you want to look at it from both a personal standpoint, but also from a business protection standpoint. And you really got to think about how important it is to protect those assets, because you really want to close that loop of personal and professional risk. So asset protection means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Depending on who you talk to, they're going to say, oh, this is what asset protection is. And really it is about creating that perfectly tailored plan for you. And it includes things like your insurance, making sure your business entity is set up correctly, making sure you're working with what Laurianne and I call a board of advisors. And that's going to be tailored to you. It's going to be your lawyer, your CPA, your financial advisor, people who are looking out for your best interests. It's also going to include things like your business succession plan, and your estate plan is incredibly important because, like I said, it's about protecting yourself, not only professionally, but personally. So there's lots of different things, different realms that you can use to protect yourself, but it's incredibly important that you do, and especially when you're a business owner, because you have more liability.
And and ladies, we're going to get into those specific details that Lauren just mentioned, but I do have a question. I want to find out what made you want to leave your W-2 and start your own firm, Laurianne?
Well, in my instance, I gave you a little bit of a vision of where I was. And so I was a partner at a big law firm and expressing breast milk and FedExing it back to my nanny and all of the things that seems very exciting, but is kind of a drag. And when my youngest daughter was born, and she, you know, was in the hospital quite a lot because of birth defect that she had, I then went to work in-house, and I thought, well, that will make things easier for me. And in point of fact, you know, I worked at a health system that, you know, a health system works 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I'd have a meeting at 5:30 in the morning where I'd have to call my dad and he'd drive down so that I could drive through an ice storm to get to the meeting. And I quickly started to visualize and journal and meditate about what my perfect job would be. And, you know, I wanted something that was closer to home. I wanted something where I could go to a play at the kids' school. I wanted something where I could decide what I worked on and whether it was important to me or not. And so I developed a couple of businesses on the side during the time that I had the W-2, but eventually in 2000, I decided to give up that W-2 job and just do what you see here, which better be my perfect job since I created it.
So I love that story, being a mom of myself. So I can just imagine juggling it all and having all the balls in the air. And that's why I always joke around. There's no such thing as work-life balance. It's integration, right? So kudos to you for juggling all of that. So I really want to get into the meat and potatoes of the discussion. So what are some of the biggest legal pitfalls as you become self-employed? As we mentioned, some have businesses, some are entrepreneurs. So when you're self-employed, what should we be looking for? How should we be protecting ourselves in this journey?
Well, you know, there's obviously pros and cons to everything, right? You know, when you give up your W-2 job, you realize there's no more consistent income. You know, I had an office manager who said to me very early on, you're the first one who doesn't get paid. Everyone else here gets paid, but you don't. If there's not enough revenue, you've got to go out and get your clients yourself. You obviously, you know, that as you said, it's integration, but there's a lot of stress, and you know, a lot of people have a hard time making a division of any kind between their work life and their personal life once they take on a business. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of potential liability. So all of those things are things that you want to think about, as Lauren mentioned, when you're looking at asset protection for a business of your own. And it's not like just walking into the job and sitting in your chair and somebody just tells you what to do or how to go about doing it. You know, somebody else figures out, when I'm at a law firm, somebody figures out my malpractice insurance. When I own this business, I've got to figure out the insurance myself and get those advisors that will help me along the way. So I think it's thinking about the various things that could happen. You know, one of the things we like to do with business owners is when you start a business, everybody's super excited to start it, but thinking on that day that you start the business, how is this going to end? Do I want to sell this business? Do I want to, you know, hand it down to the next generation? Or am I just going to close this business and maybe start another business? And so those are all important things to think about, you know, your death, you know, you're losing a partner, if in fact you have a partnership, all of those things you want to be thinking about as you're starting the business.
So I'm glad you touched on that. So what do we do? And I'm going to give you 3 different situations that are the most common. And I would love for you to tell us how we can protect ourselves, right? And be on the offense instead of always feeling like we're on the defense, right? So what do we do if we get sued, divorced, or die? Like, how do we prepare for us dying so our family's not scrambling or getting something in probate? How do I protect myself if I get divorced, if I get sued? Those are the top 3 concerns I hear a lot about. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yep. So let's take getting sued first. That is a very a real concern. And what you want to do is make sure that you have the right insurance in place to make sure that you have coverage. You know, do you need board of directors insurance? Do you need business interruption insurance? You know, there's a variety of things. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the be all and end all, but it's certainly going to give you some protection if in fact you get sued. There's also things you can do with your estate planning, your business documents to protect that entity. You know, you think about the various businesses that you're you're starting, some people have one, some people have many. Think about it as a tugboat. So you have a tugboat at the front, and you have a line to each one of those businesses. The reason why we don't want everything in that tugboat is because if there's one problem with any of the businesses, the whole mess falls apart, right? So if we have the lines for the various business lines, we just cut the line for the one business that's having the problem. Maybe it got sued. You let that sink and you go on. So it's partly the structure of your businesses, but also making sure you have things like insurance. Secondarily, the getting divorced. As I've already told my tale of woe, I really think everybody who gets married should have a prenup. And if you're a mother or a father of a child, you want to give them as a wedding present a prenup. And the reason why you want to do that is because if something was to happen to you and they inherit your wealth from your businesses or various other things, remember that potential spouse of your child could get 50% of those assets if that prenup's not in place. Now, what if you don't have a prenup? You're like me and you just didn't think about it. It never even occurred to you. My family was of very meager means. I never even considered that I would have assets going forward because, my parents, worked very hard, but they didn't really have anything to give us. The things you want to do in those instances is to have your business structure such that you're protecting your assets. You might have your estate plan that are going to protect your assets in a divorce. And last but not least, if you die, obviously, that's an instance where you want to really think about your estate plan, having a will or a trust, and we can talk more about what the differences are of those, but a business succession plan so that, say you passed away or you're incapacitated, both you need to deal with. Will that business go into your trust so that there's a trustee that can either run your business, which might be to the benefit of your beneficiaries, or sell your business, which might be a better answer if in fact the person that's the trustee really can't run your business. So all of those you can deal with in your estate plan.
So what I would, sorry, I'm going to jump in really quick because I want the death one to be elaborated on. The reason for, I know we have, how many women are on here, right? 31 women. And I can tell you about 6 of them DM'd me separately and said, Brooke, if you can ask her, like, what is the first step that I can do as an individual? Because some people, they have stuff in I've gone through this, going through probate. What is the first step I can take where my family's not fighting over my stuff? So can you give us maybe the first 1 to 4 steps that will make our family be at peace so it's not chaotic? They're not fighting with the courts. They're not fighting to get the money. Can we get maybe 3 action steps that they can take to prepare for the future for that?
Right. So just to give you just a little bit of background, there's 4 things you can do. You can do nothing. That's your scenario. You're going to probate. Everybody's going to fight. It's going to be a bad situation. And the only people who are going to benefit from that are the court and the lawyers, right? The next option is a will. That's better than doing nothing. But what people don't understand about a will is that a will goes to probate. That means everything's public. You're going to have to publish all of your debts. All of your creditors are going to see everything. People think, oh, I don't have enough money, so I don't need to do anything beyond a will, but that really does send you to probate. If you go to probate, that is like saying to your family after you die, what I want you to do is I want you to sue yourself, pay for the attorney's fees, and then argue with a court for 1 to 2 years, maybe, 5 years, maybe longer, depending on the difficulty. That's going to be 5 to 10% of your assets are going to go to that effort in probate court. So those generally are not great options if what your question is I die, I don't want these things to happen. So the next 2 are, you want to have a trust, which is either revocable. So most people have a trust that's revocable while they're alive. And when they die, it becomes irrevocable, or that last item, which would be an irrevocable trust. And we can talk about that in more detail. But a trust is private. A trust is something you plan for in advance, and it tells your beneficiaries and your trustee, this is exactly what I want you to do. It also has some tax advantages, but the more specific you can be in your trust, the better it will avoid the problems that you raised, which is nobody has to ask the question, well, you know, mom didn't give me this, dad didn't give me that, because it's all written down and it's clear to everybody. And if you have a good relationship with your estate planning attorney, I think it's always a good advice to bring everybody in. You know, if you think you're going to have a fuss, resolve it while you're alive and say to everybody, look, I have a business partner. This is good. My business is going to go there. It's not going to be a party to your guys' divorce or those kinds of things. So the more planning you can do, the better. And the estate planning is super important for protecting that. But think of your trust as a basket. You know, all you're doing when you create that trust and sign it is to have that basket. What you've got to do after you sign the trust is take your assets and put them in the trust. If you don't do that part, the stuff that you left out will still go to probate. So you want to make sure that you really understand, you know, have that Excel spreadsheet with all of the passwords, all of your assets on it. You know, if you died, what would your daughter do? Where would she go to look at how to access those things so that it's seamless in the process? Some people don't want to talk about their death, or they think that they're going to have a problem with your family, but I can tell you, and as you elaborated, you'll have a lot more problems when you're watching them from heaven, fighting over everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. So I'm going to bring Lauren in now, because I think Laurianne did a really good job of putting together like the top 4 things that, you know, can happen. And we definitely want 2 and 3. We want an estate plan and a trust. And so, you know, Lauren, I know you guys do a fantastic job of having an annual checklist, if you will. So tell us something that we should be doing annually to reduce our risk outside of just giving you a call.
Sure. Well, that's obviously step number 1, but there's a lot of things you can do to reduce your risks. Some of you may have heard of, we like to use a SWOT model. And what that is, it's SWOT. So you're going to look at the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is when you're looking at your business, or, you know, you're trying to take really serious inventory of what's going on. I guess that's the place you want to start, is really take an inventory of your business assets, your personal life, your personal assets, everything. And so you want to look at what strengths and weaknesses there are. And then you want to look externally at what other opportunities exist, and also what external threats exist. And when you perform that analysis, you're going to come up with a lot of things, and these are going to change year to year. So it's really important every year, and maybe even twice a year, to do this. You want to also think about the questions that Brooke just asked Laurianne. Do you have answers to all those for your business? Do you know exactly what's going to happen if you got sued, if you got divorced, if you die, if you're incapacitated, if you're in a partnership, what happens if your partner dies? If you can't answer those with certainty, I mean, that's a really good place to start looking to reduce your risk, because whatever unanswered questions you have, that's a big opportunity for risk, and you want to make sure that you have that answer. So you want to look at your business documents. You want to look at all your contracts with any, you know, if you use vendors or software, anything, what liability exists in those contracts, and how have you mitigated those risks? If your business has peaked, have you thought about maybe diversifying assets? I mean, you need to really just take a full big picture view, look at what risks you have, and then start putting documents in place, start putting that insurance in place, start putting tools in place, asking that board of advisors, what can I do to really protect these risks? And again, it's going to be tailored to every individual, but you're definitely going to need some level of insurance. You're definitely going to need to make sure your documents are all stable in place and protect you, and that you have that comprehensive view of not only what your risk is, but what have you done to mitigate all of those potential areas of risk.
Yeah, there's quite a checklist. So,
Yeah.
I've walked through these steps often with the couple of businesses that I have. So we mentioned a lot about trusts, and those are obviously that's a trust is a huge way to help protect the assets. So besides that, like, tell us a little bit more about the protection piece of protecting the assets themselves, because they're the business, sometimes they're physical, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're a client list. Everybody's businesses are different.
Sure. I mean, there's so much to think about when you're when you're looking at your risks. It can be a little overwhelming. And so you really want to make sure you do, keep that running list of what potential risks are there. And like you said, there's physical risks. You want to make sure, your doors are locked, your passwords are protected. You don't have sticky notes out that say my password to get into all my accounts is this and it's the same for everything. I mean, you got to really make sure you're looking at, those physical safeguards. Also, you want to make sure you have those protections for, your security. So you do want to look at, do you have cyber insurance? Do you need cyber insurance? Do you have encryption on your email? But you also really want to look at, again, what happens, for all those issues that we talked about with disability, death, things like that. Do you have sufficient insurance? Do you review those policies every year? Do you know what they say? Do you know what they actually cover? And hand in hand, like you said, you need that estate plan and you need all the documents that come along with it. So when you're working on that estate plan, you want to make sure you have a business succession plan. If you have a business, is your business in your estate plan? Have you taken the steps to transfer the shares, to transfer whatever you need to get it in your estate plan? And do you have the right estate plan in place? Do you have a financial power of attorney? Is huge, because if you're out of the country, you're locked out of your bank accounts. You need somebody here. You need an active financial power of attorney so that you have a person that you trust, you have handpicked, they have the documents showing it, that they can go to the bank and handle your affairs if you for some reason cannot, or if you are fall unconscious, something like that. You need to make sure that you have those documents in place and that they're active and effective so that they can be used tomorrow if need be. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, all sorts of, lots of documents, lots of paper trails here, but they're all really important, and it's hard. You don't want to get bogged down by them because they really are important. And that really is why we always emphasize as board of advisors that you really want to make sure you trust your financial advisor to say, whoa, there's a red flag here. And have that team and have that extra level of protection to help you protect all your assets.
So Laurianne, I have a couple more questions for you, and then I got DM'd one. So I'll start with, what is the difference between a revocable and an irrevocable trust?
Okay, so a revocable trust is something, as the name denotes, you can change it, right? Revoke. So you could come in my office and say, I'm not really sure whether I want to use Aunt Jane or Aunt Sally. I'm going to say to you, it doesn't really matter, Brooke. It's going to be fine because we can change it tomorrow. An irrevocable trust is, again, what it says. It's irrevocable. So there are some minimal things you can change in an irrevocable trust, but the whole concept of an irrevocable trust is to get those assets out of your name so that if you get sued, if you, have some other legal problem of sorts and people are looking for your assets. My brother on Friday night was pulling out of his driveway and hit an electric bike that was going 25 miles an hour. And the kid said, oh, he's totally fine. And the next day he had the most litigious personal injury lawyer in Florida already hired. And he had, 2 broken ribs. And the one thing we said was, and his kid said was, whoa, really glad you have an irrevocable trust. Because when that lawyer then goes to sue, which lawyers tend to do, they're going to look up to see, oh, wow, the house isn't in my brother's name. this isn't in, his name, his businesses aren't in his name because he has that irrevocable trust. And he's going to be a lot less of an interesting target for that plaintiff's attorney. And that's just like a very simple example, but immediately brings to mind the fact that it has certain protections. And my brother is kind of a serial entrepreneur as well. And he's in his 70s, but he did his irrevocable trust when he was 65. Now, if you have an irrevocable trust, a lot of people are concerned, well, I have to still pay my bills. I mean, I had an 82-year-old the other day who said, I still have to have my nails done and I need to still pay my credit cards. What you do is you set up a trustee that kind of manages your accounts and those kinds of things. So it's not to be taken lightly to just set up an irrevocable trust. But obviously the other advantage to an irrevocable trust is the nursing home problem. As you age, people really worry that all of their assets they've built all their lifetime is going to have to be spent down before the nursing home will help them. And, a nursing home can be $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 a month, depending on the services that you need. And so an irrevocable trust, because it takes all the assets out of your name, generally, if for some period of time in the state of Michigan, it's 5 years, if you have an irrevocable trust, all those assets are out of your name, and the nursing home, you get the state and federal support, and you don't have to pay down those assets. So that kind of gives you a small snapshot of what the irrevocable trust is.
I love it. You're such a wealth of information. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for that. We're all learning here, y'all. So someone DM me and asked, how does a holding company protect us?
So,
they said that they went to estate. I did an estate planning and they told me to have a holding company. How does a holding company protect us?
So think of it in that example that I gave you of the tugboat. The tugboat's the holding company, right? So, and a lot of companies are set up this way so that you have a global holding company at the top, and then all of your businesses are those lines going underneath it. So yes, you own those assets, but you're able to cut that line if one of those businesses is a problem and let that boat sink, which would be that business that's having that legal problem, or maybe, the revenue isn't there, or you've had some other problem with it. And then that holding company isn't affected by the legal problems of those individual companies underneath. So that's generally how people use a holding company.
I have a couple of questions too, Laurianne. Some people aren't familiar with the financial board of advisors or the board of advisors that you put together with your estate plan. And I'd like for you to touch on that a little bit, who those key people are part of the estate plan, because we work together in that area. And then also, if you can also touch on who you should be putting as your trustee, not just for the irrevocable, but for the revocable, because those are things that you two are personally working on for me, because what I've done in the past has to be updated now, and things have changed. And it's important for them to understand when they're trying to pick a trustee for the trust, that it doesn't have to be your sister, brother, cousin, whatever.
Yeah. So we like to refer to the trustee as the stucky. It's not a good job. It's nobody who is the trustee. Originally, everybody, all the kids want, oh, I want to be mom's trustee. And then when they actually have to do it, it's actually a very complicated process. And even if you're unfamiliar with the obligations of a trustee, which you're a fiduciary when you're a trustee, so you have legal obligations, you're going to want to go back to that concept that you mentioned first, which is your board of advisors. People think of a board of directors as, people who sit on a board for a company. When Lauren and I talk about a board of advisors, we're talking about your lawyer, your CPA, your financial person. You might have other people, a mentor, a spiritual advisor, all of those people that you should be gathering over the time of you building your business and your lifetime, of people that you trust. And I have clients all the time that make a big financial decision, but didn't talk to their lawyer, didn't talk to their financial person. Not that you have to go to your lawyer and say, oh, decide what I should do. But if you get people who know you, know your business, know your family, and give you their advice, I mean, I'd rather have 6 people's point of view, because they're going to maybe think of things that are different than what I'm thinking about as a single mom trying to build my wealth over time. And even with my daughters, I say, they want to buy a car. I say, have you talked to your finance guy? Have you talked to your CPA? How should you structure that? Have you talked to your insurance guy? Has he told you what limits you should have on that car? One of the simple things that people make the mistake about is they have cars in both the husband and the wife's name. All you've done in that instance is give a plaintiff's attorney 2 people to sue. If you have 2 cars, if the wife drives the one car, that should be in her name, and vice versa for the husband. There's no, each other can drive each other's car. You'll still have coverage. But simple things like that your insurance person would know, your lawyer might know, that you might not necessarily know. So that's the board of advisor concept. But as to picking your trustee, I think, Candace, you and I have talked about this. There are professional trustees that you can hire that really kind of take the family dynamic out of the fray. Oftentimes when, somebody comes in and they have 3 kids and they can't, maybe the oldest isn't necessarily the right one. I'll give you my example again. I have 2 daughters, 33 and 31. My one daughter, goes to Africa quite often and is a specialist in West Africa. And my other daughter's an investment banker. And I've always been a single mother, and my brother was my trustee. And I decided on a Christmas that I should bring my daughters in. They seem like intelligent people, and I should probably change the trustee to one of them because they're adults. And I started to listen to their conversation. And my youngest daughter said, well, don't have Alyssa do it because she's in Africa all the time. She'll never return your phone call. You'll be in a nursing home somewhere and no one will take care of you. And my older daughter said, well, yeah, Cassie's really good with finance, but she'll pull the plug the second you have a medical problem because she won't have time. I listened to 10 minutes of this with my very intelligent, lovely daughters, and I went, oh, my brother's being my trustee for the rest of my days. Now, for me, all of my brothers are lawyers. So to have my brother as the trustee was a simpler decision for me. But it's that type of thing that a professional trustee may be a much better option. Sometimes people ask me to be the trustee because they know I know everybody in the family. Everybody knows I'm neutral. I don't do that very often, but in some instances, a professional trustee, a lawyer, an accountant, somebody else may be a much better choice than a family member. And remember, we're trying to avoid problems. It's hard enough when mom dies, mom's incapacitated, dad dies. Then all of a sudden you're adding the problems of managing the money, how things get distributed. You're instantaneously, I just talked to a family the other night and I said, it's not that we don't trust everybody. We trust them, but we want to have everything written down so that when mom and dad are gone, there are no divisions amongst everybody because we all know what the deal is because it's all written down. People don't want to talk about their death and they think, well, I'm in heaven, they're fighting, it's not going to be my problem. But trust me, you're whittling away at your assets while they're all hiring lawyers to fight with each other, which is not usually your intent. So both of those questions are super important, I think.
I want to, well, one, I'm so glad you were speaking about the whole board of directors and having people to go through, because my friend went through this. She had bought a house here in California, and then 10 months into it, ended up renting it out. before, and there's laws in California which resulted in a 6-figure tax bill.
Yeah.
Had she called her CPA or her lawyer, she would have realized when you buy a house, you can't rent it out the first year without massive penalties. So y'all listen to Laurianne and Lauren, okay? Now she has a 6-figure tax bill, insane. So I'm gonna dig in what we all wanna know about, but we don't know how to ask or talk about, myself included. How do you talk about a prenup? Like, it's so unromantic. Hey, boo, I love you, but I am not thinking that, what if you screw me over? I need to know that my babies and my money is protected, even if I don't have any money. It's so unromantic. So many people don't discuss these type of things. How do you suggest we bring this up or talk about it? Or even if we don't have anything now, but we know we're on our way up, how do you initiate that conversation while being tactful?
Well, this is a very important thing to talk about before you're married, because if you can't have difficult financial conversations with your spouse, it might not work long term, myself included, you know, so point the finger at me. So I think it's, you know, and I regularly have brides walk into my office with the prenup in hand. You know, I'm getting married in 7 days. He gave me this. I'm so upset. He doesn't trust me. You know, it's just a matter of getting everyone to calm down, you know, and to say, are we intelligent, thoughtful adults that understand that, you know, I don't know what the percentage is today, but it's something like 50% of divorce of marriages end in divorce. So it's not an out of the realm conversation. And in addition to that, you know, I had another couple that called the other day, and she had an investment property. He had a business, and they're a little bit older, first marriage. And for them, it was like, hey, this is a responsible thing for us to talk about. So I think you can expect the, you know, oh, I'm so upset, this is unromantic. But if you really take the time to have the conversation, and you also have good board of advisors, right? So if the fiance is super upset, she goes to her lawyer and he says to her, wait a second, you have as much concern as anybody. So this is good for you too. And I think prenups also can be drafted in such a way to encompass both what the people had prior to the marriage, but also what their expectation is when they're married. But I can tell you, having that my father was a Methodist minister and counseled tons of people before they got married, finances, children, these are things that people can get through the first question. But generally, you know, when you ask them the second question, the third question, those are the questions that you actually want to be talking about. So I think a good mentor, a good helper can help with that stuff. And you can also really draft something that makes sense for people. It doesn't have to be a one size fits all. But it is a hard problem to address. And you know, it can be very emotional because you don't want to go into a marriage with the idea that we're going to get divorced. But it's like I talked about with the business. If on the day you start that business, we're already talking about how that business will end, we're all going to end up in a much better place. And obviously, if you don't need the prenup, it never comes into effect, right? So you want to be, as Lauren was talking about, thinking about these things in advance and planning for them as a potential.
Yeah, so one of the questions in the chat, Laurianne, oh, there you go, sorry, was if you're already married, it's too late, right?
Well, it's not too late in that it's too late for the prenup, yes. And in my case, it was too late because I did all the things that a lawyer should not do in my divorce. But you can, as you're planning various business ventures, you know, have agreements between you and your spouse. Say your spouse is doing some real estate investing, you're doing some real estate investing. He doesn't want your liability, you don't want his liability. There's ways in which to structure those documents and for everybody to agree hey, if something goes astray, it's particularly important in a second marriage where, you know, the spouses maybe had kids from the prior marriage that they want to make sure to protect. And you can do a lot of things in your estate planning to protect against those things as you go forward. So I don't think all is lost if you don't have a prenup, but it's obviously the sooner you start to plan for it and take care of it, the better.
Sure, sure. And there's ways that you can structure the trust so that they see that, like for me, all of my businesses are in my name and I have a separate trust from my husband. As you guys know, it's kind of complicated. It's probably overcomplicated as we discussed.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of the reasons why it was set up that way, for his protection and for mine, I guess is the best way to say it, because we didn't get a prenup either.
Yeah. And I have a couple that both work in a business, but it's really the wife's business. And
Right.
the husband had some CPA and it's a second marriage. She's got one daughter and a granddaughter, and she wants that business to go to that granddaughter. And so we structured their estate plan very clearly. He has 3 girls by a prior marriage, but none of that business is his. And so we had to really be very careful that none, you know, she's happy to take care of her husband, and you have life insurance and various other things can help with that. But if she dies, she wants that business sold and given to her daughter and her granddaughter. So you can imagine this gets very specific and very complicated, but there are definitely things you can do to protect each person, even if you don't have a prenup.
Sure. And I know you're not giving legal advice at this point, but one of the questions in the chat was in regards to trustees being in another country. If they don't have, you know, family or people that they trust here in the United States, and they're an immigrant, as an example, what things can happen in those kinds of situations?
I think, you know, you really want to look at every single situation like that very specifically. Different countries have different rules to this effect. And so you would want to make sure that the trustee would be fully recognized in a court in the United States, assuming that that's where your assets are. You know, there's people who have assets spread all over the world, right? And their trustee may be different depending on where those assets are. So I think if you've got that situation, you really want to sit down with somebody who's knowledgeable and go through the very specific facts and make sure that it works in the way you think it's going to. Because as you had said, Candace, the trustee is not just somebody who's your trusted family member who's going to help with some of these things. It may be somebody who needs to run a business. In my case, I have a law firm. I can't give that business to anyone who doesn't have a law degree. So you want to be very careful with the business laws for the various things you're managing and also what countries your assets are in.
Yeah, that's why Tina Turner passed away in Switzerland. You got to read her story, ladies, if you haven't.
That's very true. Very true.
I have more questions for Lauren. So I'm going to jump in because I think some people mean to put it in the chat. For some reason, I'm getting some DMs on the side too, but I'm going to pause because somebody's question first got skipped. So from Lucy, how much net worth is there a minimum of net worth to set up a trust? And what's the cost range to set up that trust?
So there's no minimum net worth. I think that's a huge misconception is people think I'm not getting a trust. I'm not rich. Those are for old rich people. I'm not old. I'm not rich. I don't need a trust. We disagree with that wholeheartedly. A trust is a great way for a lot of people. I mean, if you have, and I think a lot of people have more assets than they think. A lot of people will say, do you own a home? Yeah. Do you have a car? Yeah. Do you have, a bank account? Yeah. Well, all of a sudden this is starting to add up. When you're looking at your net worth, it adds up quicker than you think. And really what you want to look at is it's different from state to state. In Michigan, you want to look at, the small estate size. I think it's around $20,000. So if you have more than $20,000, if you own a home, you're going to need a trust. And you're going to want to be able to protect that, because otherwise all of the assets, all of the equity you have in your home, the day you die, and if everybody's fighting over it in probate, you have nothing. And sometimes you end up with a bill instead. So you want to make sure that you have a trust if you have, essentially any assets above whatever that small estate is in your state.
I'm so glad you hit the probate again, because one of our questions are, yes, say we didn't prepare ourselves. So, and now a parent has passed. So what are the first steps kids have to take if a parent suddenly passes away? They don't leave a will, they don't leave a trust. What is the first step they should take? And two, what if there's also assets overseas? So it's kind of a two-part question. One, parent passed, what should I do now? There's no trust, there's nothing, everything's in the air. And how do you handle a passing if there's assets overseas, if there's also no will or trust?
So the first thing that you are going to have to do in that case is likely you're going to want to talk to an attorney who knows the county that they're in, knows what's required. You're going to have to do things like file an obituary, publish an obituary, things like that. So there's steps that have to be taken relatively quickly if somebody dies with no documents. So you want to start, find an inventory, try to start creating an inventory of their assets. Do you even know what bank accounts they have? Do you even know what property they have? And what are those entities going to require? And a lot of times it starts by, you're going to have to start by filing that probate case. It's going to have judge oversight likely. And, the court's going to tell you what to do, and it's going to be a process. And unfortunately, it's going to take time and it's going to take money. But it will hopefully all get sorted out in the end. Although we had a case recently that was, this poor soul had their uncle who had no kids, and she was the niece, and they went through probate, they closed his estate, and then she found an insurance policy on the unclaimed property, and she went back to reopen it just to get this, there were 3 kids that were entitled to this money, and I think it was like $15,000. So it wasn't nothing, but it took them over 2 years. We've been helping them. It's still not closed, and it's just been such a headache to get this money. So it's best to, try to work with the county that you're in, see what's going on, find somebody who knows that county and can help you really nail down those assets and try to inventory everything and stay on top of things, because there will be things to take care of, especially if the judge is appointing you as the person to do that. So you'll want to make sure to lock down those assets and hopefully have some counsel that can help you.
So the first step then, sorry.
I was just going to say, one of the questions in the chat, Maria Rangel asked was, is there such a thing as a trustee workshop and, person going over living trust? And I really want to encourage you guys, we're going to have another one of these, because we knew this was going to be like this, because we're almost at the top of the hour. We're at the 56, so we've got 4 minutes to be conscientious of time. But we also have the ability to bring on someone else who is not just an attorney, but she's not an attorney. I know someone personally who acts as the fiduciary trustee that we were talking about, the person who you can hire outside of your family to be the trustee of an estate. So if people want to potentially hear from somebody like that can go through an actual checklist, like she would probably provide a free checklist for everyone as an example. Like she'd be happy to share that with everybody. And she came from a situation as a CPA, having to take care of her mom's estate without anything. Like she lived this ridiculous story and then made a career out of it. She switched her job from CPA to trustees and helping people get this checklist together, if you will. So if you guys have interest in that, I can reach out to her potentially as well. So it's 7:57. Brooke, if you have one last question you want to get out, we normally open it up for questions, but we've had so many of them.
I do want to let everyone know that if you scan the QR code that's on Laurianne's and Lauren's background, it'll take you to a contact us page where you can fill out some information and they will reach back out to you and they're going to have a call with you. If you then click around on their site and you go and there's this area called practice areas. And on that page, they have a bunch of blog posts about estate planning and I have a trust. Now what? I just read that one. So just there's so much information on there. This will all get sent out in the recording. So if you're on your phone and you can't scan it, it'll get sent out to you guys in the recording. But just so you know, that QR code is there for your use. And I hope you guys take advantage. I've already signed up for my consultation, even though I'm in Indiana. I'm hoping they can help me out.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this night. We definitely learned a lot and we realized how much homework we have. So thank you so much. We definitely will be reaching out. Some of the ladies have still a lot of questions, so they will be reaching out. And for you ladies, remember this is a series of 3 sessions just because we know how important this is. So we have them today, and the next 2 other sessions, we also gonna continue with the topic, protect your assets. So please invite other people, make sure you share this information. This is gold. And you know how many headaches we can avoid by just sharing this. This is like a third eye opening. So share with your friends. Stay tuned in our Facebook group and our WhatsApp group. And also remember, if you're looking to invest in real estate, be sure to book a call with us. We have plenty of opportunities open, so join us on this journey of growing our assets, our portfolio. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much, Lori and Lauren, for your time. This was phenomenal. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
At least cute. Where's our music, Maria? We need some exit
Sorry.
music now.
You're right. You're right. We do.
Yay!
Thank
You're
you,
right.
ladies. You were
Thank you,
fantastic.
everybody. Thanks,
This was
Lauren.
great.
Thank you, Laurianne. Good night. Buenos noches.
Not playing. I don't know what's happening.
I do my hair toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Feeling good? I'm
There you
not
go.
really
There you go.
here.
I don't know why it's not sharing, but you know, this is what happens. At least at the end.
We can listen to my amazing voice, like nails on a chalkboard.
Perfect. It's perfect. Oh man. Thanks everyone.
Oh my God.
Bye, ladies.
Bye, Michelle. Good to see you. Good
Oh,
to see you,
have a good-
Maria.
Bye.
Feeling good.
Oh, I love it. I love it.